The Galactic Council chamber was silent. The kind of silence that doesn't just fall, but crashes, loud in its own way, sharp enough to slice through breath. Every eye, be it compound, stalked, bioluminescent, or even psychic, was fixed on the small, unarmored figure standing at the center of the circular dais. A human. Lieutenant Juno Reyes. She didn't look like much. 5'8", dusty brown hair tied back, uniform scuffed from battle, a faint scar under one eye, more tired than terrifying. But she stood with her chin raised, one hand clenched behind her back, and the other holding a tiny silver case. The Grand Speaker of the Xyle Dominion, a creature of mist and swirling crystal, pulsed irritably. "Human, explain yourself. You trespass here, uninvited. You threaten peace." Juno didn't blink. Her voice was calm. "Peace? You mean your occupation treaty? The one that handed Earth over like a rusted tool to the mining guilds and biomass harvesters?" Murmurs rippled through the chamber. A few diplomats looked away. "You fired on a diplomatic vessel," snarled the Gorthar ambassador, whose race evolved in lava. "That is an act of war." "No," Juno said quietly. "It was an answer. A reply to what you did in Jakarta, to the children, to the elders, to my brother." That shut them up. The records of what had happened in Jakarta were buried in sealed archives, redacted and scrubbed for council viewing. But those who had seen them, those few, remembered the smoke, the screams, the bone pits. "You're angry," said the Oris Prime softly, her jellyfish-like body flickering with empathy. "But we must not let emotion decide the fate of trillions." Juno smiled, and it was not a nice smile. "Oh, don't worry. This isn't emotional. It's a warning." She set the silver case down and opened it with a click. Inside was a memory crystal, standard galactic tech used for data transmission. But it pulsed with something else, something darker, feral, untamed. "I brought you a message from humanity." "You are not authorized to represent your species," spat the Grand Speaker. "I don't need authorization," Juno said, "because the ones you authorized, you killed them. The diplomats, the peacekeepers, the collaborators, every one of them. So now you get me." There was a pause, a dangerous, lingering pause. "You dare threaten this council?" The lava being growled, starting to glow. "No," Juno replied, voice level. "I'm not threatening you, I'm telling you." She touched the crystal. Images flooded the room, holograms flickering like memories projected through fire. Cities rising in resistance, space stations retaken by human rebels. AI networks being rewritten mid-battle, prison planets breaking their chains, colonies long thought conquered turning into fortresses. And something worse. A face. An old man. Pale, tired, smiling slightly. His voice crackled as he spoke. "We warned you. We begged, but now you've taken everything. So here's the deal. We're not asking anymore." Another voice, younger, female, fierce. "You declared war on Earth. That was your mistake, because now you've got us. All of us." Juno leaned in close to the council table, looking each delegate in the eye. "Congratulations. You just made the worst mistake in galactic history." The silence was broken by the alarms. From outside, the warships began dropping out of FTL. Human ships, thousands. And unlike before, they weren't outgunned anymore. They had learned. They had adapted. And this time, they weren't fighting for survival. They were fighting for vengeance. The first shockwave from the human fleet's arrival hit the outer ring of the Council's orbital station like a thunderclap in deep space. The shield buffers flared blue, overloading for a fraction of a second, and the dignitaries within the Council chamber flinched. Even the ones who claimed to feel no fear. Juno didn't flinch. She just stood there and watched the panic ripple through creatures who once thought of humans as a resource, pliable, emotional, inferior. A clan diplomat hissed, voice shaking. This isn't possible. Earth has no fleet. We dismantled them. We sanctioned every weapons facility, every research center. You thought you dismantled us, Juno replied, voice low, deadly. But you didn't see what happened underground. You didn't see what happened in the asteroid belts, or Mars a hologram sparked to life behind her, an Earth fleet formation, ships arranged like a spearhead, running with new tech the Council hadn't seen before. No standard signatures, no official records, just dark hulls, red thermal trails, and purpose. Humans aren't just survivors. We're cockroaches with nukes, she said. You thought you could bomb us into obedience? You just scattered the pieces, and every piece grew teeth. The Oris Prime trembled, glowing violet with concern. This is madness. What do you want, human? Revenge? Blood? Annihilation? No, Juno said softly. Justice. The Gotha ambassador slammed its molten fist into the table, cracking the crystalline edge. You dare speak of justice after firing upon a peace envoy? That is barbarism. Juno stepped forward, eyes locked on the ambassador. You want to talk about barbarism? Let's talk about what your people did to the survivors of São Paulo. You remember that? The forced sterilizations, the body mining. The council chamber descended into chaos. Voices shouted over each other, languages layered in overlapping tones. Some screamed in sound, others in pheromone bursts, light pulses, and even telepathic shock waves. Only one voice remained steady. Juno's. I didn't come to negotiate, she said above the noise. I came to deliver a message, and to let you know the countdown's already started. At those words, the silver case blinked red. The crystal wasn't just a memory device, it was a trigger. Back aboard the Valkyrie's wreck, Juno's flagship, a war frigate forged in the asteroid fields of Enceladus and powered by stolen Xyrlian cores, the crew saw the signal light up across their panels. Commander, the AI whispered in Juno's voice, even though she wasn't there. Execute Protocol Ragnarok. The stars shifted. Across 3 sectors, human warships surged into range. They didn't announce themselves. They didn't issue demands. They targeted orbital foundries, communication arrays, military black sites hidden behind Council peacekeeping missions. And one by one, they began to fall. Back in the chamber, panic turned into fury. You will not survive this, shrieked the insectoid emissary of Kashar. We will crush Earth until its oceans boil. Juno smiled coldly. You've already tried that. She tapped her earpiece. Target 1 confirmed. Stand by. What is Target 1? The Grand Speaker demanded. Juno turned her head slowly. Let me guess. You've forgotten where Jakarta was, haven't you? The chamber froze. Her voice dropped to a whisper. That's what makes you monsters. You don't even remember the places you burned. But we do. Outside, a massive explosion rocked the Council's outer security grid. The chamber lights flickered. Juno took a slow step back from the dais. Don't bother ordering retaliation. Your entire fleet's communication uplink was rerouted 2 hours ago, right after I slipped your AI a little human-made virus. You're bluffing, said the lava being, but it no longer sounded sure. Check the feed, Juno said simply. One of the delegates brought up a real-time feed of Sector 49 Gamma. The entire Kashar supply fleet was floating dead in space. Systems offline. Crews panicked. One ship drifted into a gas giant without ever firing a shot. Another feed. This time, the orbital platform over Targus 9. A bright white flash. Then silence. You taught us everything we know about war, Juno said, and we improved it. The chamber was collapsing into chaos. Security drones buzzed to life, spinning in frantic loops with no commands. Delegates yelled into dead comm links, shouting across languages that didn't matter anymore, because panic sounded the same in every tongue. The Grand Speaker's body flickered and cracked, his crystalline form glitching with stress. "Stop this now, human. You've made your point." Juno raised her eyes, calm and empty. "No," she said. "I haven't." She pressed a button on her wrist pad. Behind her the hologram shifted. It displayed Earth, not the glossy propaganda version the Council showed in its archives, but the real thing. Scars from orbital bombardments, cities in ruins, forests poisoned by extraction drills, oceans bubbling from deep-sea mining operations gone wrong, children huddled in shelters, skies dark with ash. "You called it resource integration," Juno said, her voice trembling now, just barely. "You called it planetary development. You said we were being brought into the Galactic family." She looked around the chamber, locking eyes with delegate after delegate. "But what you really meant was, you thought we wouldn't fight back." There was silence again, but not the heavy kind from before. This was thinner, more fragile, the kind that breaks easily. "We offered you membership," said the Oris Prime, trying again, her glow dim now. "We offered peace. You offered us chains in exchange for food." Juno snapped. "And when we refused to kneel, you made examples of us. You thought we were too divided, too emotional, too human to win." She leaned forward. "You forgot what humans do when they lose everything." From the far side of the chamber, the doors blew inward with a bang that sent delegates diving for cover. Smoke rolled in, followed by the sound of synchronized boots on metal. A human strike team walked in, armor matte black, weapons low but primed. Their visors glowed red, and one of them handed Juno a tablet. "Status?" she asked. "Fleet secured Phase 1. 74 Council black sites are offline. Casualties? Minimal. Enemy fleets in chaos. Phase 2 ready on your word." Juno nodded. The Council screamed. "You're terrorists!" barked the Kshar emissary. "You'll be exterminated for this treason." Juno didn't even look at him. "You already tried to exterminate us. What you call terrorism, we call history correcting itself." The Grand Speaker's voice crackled with cold rage. "This is war, human. All of us, united against you." Juno looked around again, this time taking her time. "Then maybe you should start praying." A screen behind her lit up with another transmission. Live this time. From Earth. It was the UN General Assembly building, rebuilt with salvaged alien tech. The flag behind the speaker bore no national colors, only the black and silver sigil of the Earth resistance. A woman stepped forward. Older, strong posture, an eye patch. "This is Commander Adira Locke, High Representative of the Human Planetary Resistance, to the Galactic Council. We are not requesting negotiations. We are not asking for reparations. We do not want your seats, your treaties, or your trade." She paused. "We want your empires to burn." Delegates began shouting again. One pulled a weapon, an energy blade designed for ceremonial use. Useless. It was shot out of his hand by a human marksman before it ever activated. Adira Locke's message continued. "You lit the match. Now burn with us." The screen cut off. Juno stepped down from the dais slowly, the sound of her boots ringing like war drums. One of the delegates, an elder from a peaceful moon world, trembled. Why go this far? Don't you know what this will unleash?" Juno paused in the doorway. "We're not scared of what's coming," she said, "because we are what's coming." And then she was gone. Outside, in orbit, the human fleet began shifting again. Not retreating, spreading, like wildfire. Out in the cold, black silence of space, the fleet of Earth moved like a predator unchained, precise, patient, and cruel. Juno stood on the bridge of the Valkyrie's wreck, gazing out through the reinforced viewport as dozens of Council outposts burned in the distance. Trails of smoke and debris spun lazily across orbit. Their defensive satellites had never fired. Their AIs were still chasing phantom signals, trapped in endless loops, thanks to the virus humanity had crafted in the shadows of war-torn bunkers. Behind her, the crew worked in silence. No one needed orders. They knew what came next. "Report," Juno said, her voice like dry gravel. Commander Ishan, tall, gaunt, and wrapped in a tech-hardened exoframe, turned from the hollow map. "Phase 2's begun. Simultaneous strikes on high-density political systems. We've already seized the Zyral Dominion's relay moon and jammed their central communications. Gorthor defense fleets in disarray. They're turning on each other." "Any word from Mars Command?" Juno asked. "They've broken into the Tesseract labs." Ashan gave a dry chuckle. "The Council's top-secret weapon cache? Turns out it wasn't that secret." Juno didn't smile. Good. There was a stillness between them. Not relief, just confirmation. This wasn't victory. This was inevitability. She turned back to the window. Her reflection stared back at her, skin paler than she remembered, eyes tired but sharp. This wasn't the same woman who watched Jakarta fall. That woman had died in the rubble. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft ping. "Incoming encrypted message," said the ship's AI. "From Council Station Lyra 5. Origin, non-governmental." Juno raised an eyebrow. "Civilian?" "No," said Ishan slowly. "Resistance." The screen blinked to life, revealing a face she hadn't seen in 3 years. Colonel Milo Greaves. His eye was gone now, his left arm too. The last time they'd spoken, he was holding the line on Io, buying time for a transport ship to escape with over 1,000 children. They'd all made it. He'd been listed KIA 2 weeks later. "Hello, Reyes," he said, his voice gravelly. "Still breathing, I see." Juno's throat tightened. "You're supposed to be dead." Greaves gave a crooked smile. "Yeah, I get that a lot." He glanced off-screen, then back. "We've got a situation. Council Command's regrouping on Oris Prime. They're planning a counterstrike. Codename Starfall." Juno's eyes narrowed. "Starfall's a myth." Greaves shook his head. "Not anymore. They've moved all surviving High Command personnel to Othris. And Reyes, it's not just a counterattack. They're prepping a bioweapon, human-specific genome targeting." The temperature on the bridge felt like it dropped a few degrees. "They're calling it Mercy," Greaves said bitterly. "Quick extermination, no more resistance." For a long moment, Juno didn't speak. Then she turned. "Ishan, plot a course to Oris Prime. Full fleet shift." The commander nodded without question. Greaves' face grew serious. "Reyes, listen. If they launch Starfall, it's not just Earth. They'll wipe out every human colony, even the ones that surrendered. The Council's done pretending. They're going to finish this." "Then we finish it first," she said coldly. "They wanted us gone. Now they'll remember why they feared us in the first place." Greaves looked at her for a long time. "You really think we're the good guys anymore?" Juno didn't blink. "I think good died with Jakarta. What's left is survival and vengeance." The feed ended. Juno turned back to the crew. "Prep the warlocks. Full ghost formation. I want us in Othris orbit before they even know we've left." Ishan nodded. "And if Starfall's already active?" She stared into the void. "Then we burn the planet to the ground." As the fleet shifted into formation, the stars seemed to ripple. Human ships faded from scanners, cloaked in stolen tech. Council-grade stealth drives, fused with human ingenuity and ruthlessness. Juno sat down in the command chair. There was no going back now. This wasn't rebellion anymore. It was extermination, one side or the other. And humanity had decided. They would be the last ones standing. The jump to Oris Prime was short, too short. As the Valkyrie's wreck dropped out of warp, Juno's heart beat with a rhythm that felt half human and half machine. Years of implants, near-death surgeries, and sleepless nights had changed her. So had the war. So had the loss. Oris floated ahead like a wounded god, once a gleaming jewel of the Council's power, now surrounded by patchwork defenses. Entire moons converted into weapons arrays, defensive satellites blinking like dying stars, massive battle cruisers clustered around the orbital rings. It looked desperate, and that made it dangerous. Visual confirmation of Starfall lab. Ishan muttered, eyes locked on his interface. Deep bunker complex, triple-shielded, core-anchored. If they light the weapon, it'll broadcast through jump corridors. It won't matter where our people hide. Juno leaned forward. Do we have an entry vector? He hesitated. 1. A forgotten exhaust shaft left from when the core was still active. It's thin, tight. Only a ghost unit can get through. No ships. Juno stood. You're not going in there, Ishan said, already seeing it on her face. Yes, I am, she replied. You'll handle the fleet. I'll go in with the ground team. That's suicide. It's justice. There was a beat of silence between them. Then Ishan stepped aside. Then I'll prep the drop. Within 30 minutes, Juno stood in the launch bay, suiting up. Her armor was matte black and battle-scored, layered with adaptive camouflage and exomuscle strands. She checked her pulse rifle, then the sidearm strapped to her thigh. Each weapon had been forged by human hands under alien boots. Each one carried a personal name etched into its surface, names of the fallen. The dropship shuddered as it slipped beneath enemy detection, racing along the dark side of Oris Prime. In the troop bay with her were 5 soldiers, ghosts like her. Not just elite, but forgotten, disavowed, erased from Earth's records to protect the rest. They were vengeance in motion. There was Dax, her sniper, who once survived a vacuum breach by clinging to a dead alien corpse for heat. Mira, the explosives expert with burns down half her body. Thomas, the silent knife wielder who hadn't spoken since watching his family get integrated. And Ayla, who once hacked a council dreadnought with nothing but a screwdriver and a rage high enough to melt circuits. Juno looked at them. We're not here to negotiate. We're here to end it. They nodded as one. The drop came fast. The shaft was narrow, and for a few moments the ship screamed with the pressure of atmosphere and the heat from the planet's core grid. Then it was over. They were inside the bunker perimeter. The shaft was pitch black, silent. Juno's HUD flared to life. The path forward was a winding crawl through vent-like tunnels that led into the deepest parts of the Starfall lab. They moved in silence, boots magnetized, weapons raised. Every creak in the metal, every faint hum of energy could have been a trap. But there were no guards, no defenses. Juno frowned. Too quiet, she whispered. Mira muttered, feels like they want us in. They reached a blast door. Juno placed a charge, backed away and gave a nod. Boom. The door crumbled in, and they stormed through. What lay beyond wasn't a lab. It was a mausoleum. Rows and rows of bodies, human bodies, suspended in stasis chambers. Some alive, some... Partially. Isla choked. What is this? Juno scanned the room. Field tests. They're testing Starfall on prisoners. Thomas said nothing, but his blade was already in his hand, fingers twitching. Juno walked to the central console. It was locked, of course, but Ayla cracked it in seconds. The screen lit up, and one word blinked. A RMING. Status? Juno demanded. Final sequence. They're charging the core. Ayla answered. We've got 7 minutes. Where's the trigger point? Mira pointed at the reinforced shaft above them. Top level. That's where the broadcast uplink is. Juno didn't hesitate. Dax, Ayla, stay here. Shut this place down. Do what you can for the ones still alive. Thomas, Mira, you're with me. The ghosts split without a word. That's what they were trained for. As Juno climbed the final shaft, muscles burning, heart thundering, she wasn't thinking about strategy. Or revenge. She was thinking about Jakarta. Thinking about the children under rubble. The air above was thick with heat and radio static. They reached the uplink chamber, and standing there, waiting, was someone she never expected. Council Commander Oruron Vel, the architect of the invasion. He turned slowly. "I was hoping it would be you," he said softly. Juno raised her rifle. "Then you just made your last mistake." The chamber was silent except for the low hum of the uplink tower, pulsing with energy like a heart about to flatline. The lights flickered in a pale blue glow, casting long shadows across the walls. Juno stood at the threshold, her rifle trained on Commander Oruron Vel. He hadn't aged a day. Tall, silver-skinned, with obsidian eyes and robes embroidered in the sigils of conquest. Oruron Vel, the one who had personally signed the order to reduce Earth's capital cities to cinders, the one who smiled during the surrender negotiations, the one who called Earth's suffering necessary adaptation. Juno's finger itched on the trigger, but he didn't move. "I suppose this is justice," Oruron said calmly, voice like glass scraping on stone. "Humanity crawling back from extinction to spit in the eye of its masters." Juno took a slow step forward. "You're not my master. You're just a genocidal bureaucrat who hid behind soldiers." "I led armies," he said evenly. "I negotiated peace. You orchestrated mass sterilizations. You poisoned our oceans and then sold us the cure. You installed leaders who sold their souls for your tech. You destroyed entire bloodlines in the name of peace. And what have you done?" He countered. "Massacred unarmed council diplomats, unleashed viruses across cities, hacked medical AI to collapse infrastructure. Tell me, Reyes, are you the savior you imagined?" She didn't answer, because she didn't need to. Her silence was the answer. He took a step toward her, slow, deliberate. Starfall was never about extermination. It was about finality, clean, painless, an end to centuries of tension. "You're lying." Mira hissed behind her, rifle aimed. Juno didn't blink. "He knows we'll kill him. He's stalling." Oruron smiled faintly. "Of course I'm stalling." At that moment, the walls shuddered. A mechanical scream erupted from the uplink tower. A console lit up behind Oruron, blinking furiously. "Starfall sequence, 75% complete." Mira cursed. "He's linked it to a failsafe. If we kill him, the system finishes automatically." Oruron finished. "I may die today, but your species dies with me." Juno slowly lowered her rifle. "Don't!" Mira hissed. "We can't trigger it," she murmured. "Then what? Let him go?" Juno said nothing for a long second. Then, "I'll handle this." She stepped forward, removing her helmet. Her eyes were steel, her voice low. "Override the uplink." Oruron raised a brow. "You think I'd just hand it over?" "No," she said. "I think you want to live long enough to gloat." He laughed, quietly, genuinely. "You really are human to the core, arrogant, brutal, relentless." "And still here," Juno said. "After everything, still here." Oruron's smile faded. "I watched you bomb cities while we begged. I watched mothers bury children. I watched my father shoot himself after losing everything to one of your mining contracts. You don't get to talk about brutality." She took another step. "Close now. So here's your choice. You die, and your system kills us. Or you give us the code, and maybe we don't put a bullet in your skull." Oruron stared at her. Then, surprisingly, he laughed again. You won't kill me, Reyes. Not until you're sure you've won. That's your flaw. Juno leaned in. My flaw was thinking people like you could ever be reasoned with. Suddenly her hand moved, not to her gun, but to the uplink's emergency manual port. A knife from her belt slid into the override slot, sparking dangerously. The console screamed. "What are you doing?" Oruron snapped, for the first time sounding panicked. "Disrupting the sequence," she said. "If I can fry the input node before it completes the data stream—" Oruron lunged, but Mira was faster. Crack! A shot echoed through the chamber. Oruron Vel crumpled, blood spreading across the polished floor. His obsidian eyes blinked once, then stilled. The uplink shrieked. Sparks erupted. The console exploded in a burst of plasma. Sequence terminated. Silence. Juno stood motionless, breathing hard. Her armor was scorched, one side of her face bleeding. Mira stepped forward, checking the screen. "It's dead," she said. "Starfall is gone." Juno nodded slowly. "So is he." Then she turned to the window and looked down at the surface of Oris Prime. Now it was time to finish what they started. The smoke hadn't even cleared from the uplink tower when the alarms began. Juno and Mira stood still for a moment, frozen in the aftermath. Then the bunker's intercom crackled, shrill and angry, council dialect flooding the airwaves. They didn't understand the exact words, but the meaning was clear. They knew. Oris Prime was mobilizing. Below them, deep in the labyrinth of the Starfall facility, Isla's voice crackled over the comms. "They've activated full lockdown protocols. Auto turrets, drones, sealed exits, everything's coming online." Thomas chimed in next. "We're trapped unless we blow through the east shaft. Ayla's working on it." Juno swore under her breath and glanced at Mira. "We need to regroup and fight our way out. There's no stealth anymore." Mira's jaw tightened. "Let's finish this with noise, then." They bolted from the chamber, boots hammering against metal. The lights above flickered red, the walls trembling with the force of rising defenses. Juno's HUD lit up with hostile signals, drones swarming like hornets, tracking their movements, preparing to strike. She activated her exoframe's targeting system and launched a thermal grenade behind them. It exploded with a whoomp, collapsing a corridor and buying them seconds of breathing room. Juno patched into Ayla's feed. "Where's the exit vector?" "Sub-level 3, maintenance bay, but it's crawling with biosentries." Ayla replied, fingers flying across her terminal. "I'm rerouting the security grid, but it won't hold long. If you're coming, come now." The path ahead forked. Mira took point, laying down suppressing fire as they rounded corners and ducked under burst-fire drones. Their rifles sang a grim chorus, echoing through blood-soaked metal halls. They passed a holding chamber, glass walls shattered, and inside lay the corpses of failed experiments. Some were barely human, twisted, deformed, the product of the Council's first iterations of Starfall. Mira hesitated, looking at them. Juno placed a hand on her shoulder. "Later." Mira nodded, face pale, and kept moving. The closer they got to sub-level 3, the louder the bass trembled. Somewhere above, heavy artillery was coming online. The Council was scrambling to contain them, not just the ghosts inside, but the message they carried. If word got out that Starfall had failed, that the Council's most powerful weapon had been neutralized, it would shatter their control over the galaxy's outer systems. Finally, they reached the maintenance bay. The room was chaos. Isla and Dax were behind an overturned loader, exchanging fire with a half-dozen sentry bots. Sparks rained down from the ceiling. The bay doors, thick enough to hold back a meteor, were beginning to seal. "Go!" Isla screamed, tossing an EMP device toward the drones. It detonated with a sharp pop, frying their circuits. Juno and Mira sprinted forward, diving behind cover. Juno grabbed Ayla's arm. "Status? Door controls are manual now," she said. Someone has to crank the override while the rest of you escape. No, Juno growled. We all leave. But Dax looked up, blood trailing from his side. I'll do it. Dax! You said this wasn't about being heroes. He rasped, voice breaking. Just survival, right? So let me make sure the rest of you survive. Juno looked at him, then nodded. He rose, limped to the override crank, and began turning it. Slowly, painfully. The massive doors groaned open. 1 meter, 2. A burst of gunfire from the far corridor cut through the noise. More drones. Juno, Mira, Thomas, and Isla laid down a wall of fire, buying Dax the seconds he needed. The doors reached full clearance. Go! He shouted. They ran. Through the doors, out into the open, a launch pad hidden beneath the planet's crust. One of the Council's emergency shuttles sat unattended, engines idling. They piled inside, Mira slamming the hatch shut, Ayla already hacking the flight controls. Behind them, the chamber lit up as drones flooded the bay. Dax turned towards them, weapon in hand. And then, silence. The shuttle blasted free of the surface, fire and smoke trailing behind them. Below, Oris Prime shrank into the darkness, a planet choking on its own failed power. Inside the shuttle, no one spoke. Juno stared out at the stars, the silence pressing against her chest. Another sacrifice, another ghost, another name etched into her memory. But this time, they weren't just surviving. They were winning. The stars stretched like silver veins across the black canvas of space. Inside the stolen shuttle, the silence was thick, not from fear this time, but from the weight of everything they'd done, of everything they survived. Juno sat in the cockpit's forward seat, helmet in her lap, eyes fixed on the shrinking dot of Oris Prime behind them. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The hum of the engines and the low beep of the nav systems said enough. Dax was gone. One more name to carve into the ledger of the fallen, but his sacrifice hadn't been in vain. Coordinates locked, Isla said from beside her, her voice tight, raw. There's a rebel outpost on Kiri 9. That's our best shot. Mira leaned against the shuttle wall, arms crossed over her chest. She was covered in blood and ash, eyes hard, expression unreadable. Think they'll believe us. They'll have to, Juno said quietly. Once they see what we pulled off. Starfall is dead. The Council doesn't know it yet, but their god weapon's gone. Thomas, strapped in and pale, gave a weak laugh. Imagine the look on their faces. All that power, all that fear. And now? Nothing. Juno didn't smile. They'll come for us, hard. Let them, Mira said. But Juno knew better. This wasn't over. It had just begun. They weren't just fugitives now, they were symbols, living proof that the Council could be beaten. And in a galaxy where fear ruled every sector, proof was more dangerous than any bomb. She tapped a sequence into the console, a secret feed, buried in the shuttle's systems. Council archives, transmissions, blueprints, logs. Everything Oruron had kept hidden was now in their hands. Evidence of war crimes, proof of sterilization protocols, recordings of high-level council meetings ordering the quiet erasure of entire species. It was the match. Now all they needed was fuel. Mira looked over her shoulder. You gonna send it? Juno hesitated. Then she keyed in the transmission. Encrypted burst to the Kiri 9 rebellion. Let's see if they still remember how to raise hell. The data pulsed out into the void, like a whisper, like a scream. She leaned back and closed her eyes for a second, letting the silence settle again. Not peace. Not yet. But something close. Minutes passed. Then the console pinged. A reply. Isla pulled it up. Her eyes widened. It's not just Kiri 9. It bounced through 7 relays. The message is spreading. Juno stood slowly. Then they know. They all know. Thomas smiled faintly. We just became the most wanted crew in the galaxy. No, Juno said, pulling her rifle close and locking eyes with each of them. We just became the most dangerous. Mira stood too. So what now? Hide. No, Juno said. We build. The galaxy was waking up, and the Council, so used to obedience, so sure in its power, was about to face something it hadn't felt in centuries. A human-led resistance, unified, furious, relentless. They'd called it the worst mistake in galactic history when the humans survived the purge. When they slipped through the cracks, when they built underground, learned their enemy, and waited. Oh, how the Council laughed, until Earth's ashes gave rise to warriors like Juno Reyes. Now they would stop laughing. The shuttle banked into hyperspace, engines glowing as they vanished into a wormhole streak. Behind them, Oris Prime burned. Ahead, the stars waited. There would be more battles, more betrayals, more loss. But this time, humanity wasn't fighting for survival. They were fighting to win. And for the first time in a long, blood-streaked history, it looked like they just might.